Evidently, between the Undersiders, the Merchants, Faultline's crew, and the ABB, the heroes in Brockton Bay have no shortage of villains to worry about. Unfortunately, their troubles don't end at just those four aforementioned groups. While each of the four pose varying degrees of concern for those who care to oppose them, the Empire 88 as an organization is perhaps the most immediately distressing faction to the PRT and Protectorate. Certainly, the Empire being a massive organization of white supremacists on its own is disconcerting, more so when considering the grunts seemingly needing to assault hapless quote-unquote acceptable targets to be initiated. However, in terms of affairs more relevant to the goals of the PRT and Protectorate, said organization had a roster of 15 parahumans, each of which being no slouches when it came to combat, in one way or another. Accordingly, in light of the Empire's scale and power, the heroes were never able to eliminate them, at least while they were unified. On that note, while trying not to get too far into specifics, a series of events caused the Empire 88 to fracture between two of its lieutenants, Hookwolf and Purity. While this video will focus on parahumans that only ever were really affiliated with the Empire's then leader, Kaiser, I will mention that Hookwolf's successor group was Fenja's Chosen and Purity's was, well, the Pure. Anyway, of the 15 parahumans the Empire had, only 4 were ever significantly solely ever affiliated with Kaiser and his Empire 88. Kaiser being the obvious one, Krieg, Fenja, and Alabaster being the other 3. Beginning with Kaiser, as I've stated, he is the leader of the Empire 88 by the start of the story. Interestingly, despite the nature of the faction he leads, he does not really believe in his empire's ideology. To him, it is a convenient means to accrue power and influence. Though, perhaps one can argue that on some unconscious level that he was racist, but there isn't any way to prove that, at least based on available information. Besides, in some ways it may be worse if he isn't racist. To know what you preach is hogwash, yet still preach it. Nevertheless, with that trivia aside, Kaiser is a shaker, or at least speculated to be classified as one based on what his power is. Said power is the ability to create metal objects from solid surfaces, even surfaces he himself created. Said objects range through a great variety of things such as sheets, beams, tubes, needles, and the list goes on. However, in combat he tends to predominantly utilize spears that can reach up to 30 feet (9.14 meters) and blades, with the latter used to form walls of sharp steel and iron. Like many parahuman powers, his does seem to break various laws of physics, most notably the conservation of mass and energy. The most pertinent example to reference is his armor. In one particular scene, a character described how a network of metal expanded from a letter opener to form Kaiser's suit of armor. It goes without saying that such an object does not have at all anywhere near enough material to form said armor. Though, as I've said in a previous video, it is in all likelihood that said metal material is being pulled from some parallel Earth, or is being generated through energy gathered from said other Earth/Earths. To move on to some additional details, Kaiser's power is Manton limited. He can't generate metal from within someone's body, but that doesn't stop him from forming sharp pieces of metal directly under/nearest targets anyway. When it comes to how fast he can generate his metal constructs, it is fairly quick. At least quick enough and with enough force to be more than usable in combat. Though, when it comes to much larger constructs, it does take a fair bit longer. A 6-inch/15.2 centimeter thick, 20 feet/6.1 meters wide piece of metal was generating at a, quote, glacial pace, and 4 feet/1.2 meter solid steel columns took longer to pop up in comparison to a wall of blades. I will mention that it is never stated, to my knowledge, whether certain surfaces provide an easier time for Kaiser's power or not. 2 more things. First, someone can, to a certain degree, potentially predict where an attack from Kaiser is coming from. There does seem to be some sort of rippling effect and or grinding a metal sound when he uses his power. But with limited examples to pull from, it is difficult to determine if the latter two are due to something inherent to Kaiser's power, or if said instances of visual distortion and audio signaling relate more to what Kaiser was generating at the time. Second, Kaiser's general ability to finally control his power. I could try to describe it myself, But the description of how Kaiser forms his armor in Interlude 3.5 or Interlude 3.5, along with the marked source in the description relating to Kaiser's armor, will do a much better job in getting the point and information across. Is that a bit of a cop-out on my part? Perhaps. Moving on, Krieg can be classified as a brute and shaker, or more exactly, due to his shaker ability, he's able to be a brute. Said ability is wide-range kinetic manipulation that's stronger when used closer to him, as one can theorize that ability allowed Krieg to manipulate air friction / resistance to soften blows and to slow / disrupt / deflect projectiles. Additionally, he can make people near him have trouble breathing. As far as how much he could manipulate kinetic energy, that is unknown, but he does have a better return on investment on energy used. One such example is him punting someone, and instead of moving them maybe a few feet, he propelled them through a wall. The next person is Fenja. She's a breaker, with the ability attributed to the latter also making her a brute. Her breaker power is a spatial warping effect that allows her to grow to great heights, 3 stories, around 30 to 40 feet / 9 to 12 meters, if Skitter's internal comments are to be believed. Though, obviously, growing larger may make her stronger with the additional mass to put behind her attacks, but it also makes her a larger target. Fortunately, the other aspect of her power is how it makes incoming attacks smaller. More specifically, attacks shrink in relation to how much she has grown, leading her to be significantly more durable the larger she gets. For example, if she's 6 times her normal size, she takes 1/6 the damage. With enough damage reduction, her and her sister can at least, for a bit, brawl with Leviathan. Clothing and weapons on her do seem to grow with her. As such, she wore Valkyrie-styled armor and carried a sword along with a shield. The final person for this video is Alabaster. He's a breaker and sort of a brute. I say sort of since compared to the other individuals I noted as being a brute by proxy of some aspect of their power, Alabaster is not like Krieg or Fenja, who either get more durable from a specific application of their power or get more durable due to a secondary passive power effect. Alabaster is a regenerator brute, with an asterisk. He does not regenerate in the more quote-unquote typical ways one would assume. His breaker ability restores his physical, mental, and emotional state to a more previously pristine condition. To get more specific, it's in a set time interval of 4.3 seconds. So, he's not so much rapidly recovering from an injury and more so being blinked from one state of being into another. Thus, the breaker classification. I'll also note that Alabaster can't feel pain. Anyway, since he doesn't have a power that gives him a more immediate combat advantage, he, as a fairly normal human being, is deadly in a variety of other ways. Sure, his power affords him some leeway to be a bit more reckless and aggressive, but he himself still needs to be a formidable foe outside of that. As such, whether it be due to his power helping things along or him just being proactive, he is very fit and has great reflexes. Additionally, with the latter two in mind, he is also skilled in the use of firearms and presumably knives, considering he keeps a concealed stiletto on him. All that being said, his ridiculous ability to sustain and recover from grievous wounds can be beaten. One can deal enough bodily harm to him, one can completely or significantly destroy or damage his corona pollentia, one can destroy his heart at the beginning of a loop, or one can utilize more esoteric / irregular means to dispose of him. Well, that's all for this one. I don't know if I'll work on the Pure or Fender's Chosen next, but until next time.